Okay, if you just joined us, the Jerusalem Post says he was a rabid right-wing Zionist. And he used the terms that right-wing neocons and Zionists use on radio in the U.S. It's just a fact. I don't know if he wrote this manifesto. The Easter Bunny could have done it. It's admitted that his Facebook was manipulated. It was in the Google Wayback Machine saved. And we were able to track that. Other big news reports are confirming that someone went in and changed it from Knights Templar Illuminati member, Mason, to Christian conservative. This is a rebranding, clearly, regardless of whether it's real or not, from the Muslim threat, we're taking your rights away because of it, to everybody's a terrorist. And I told you this was coming last week. We had drills the days before, blowing up things less than a kilometer away. We have the police showing up, knowing the gunman's name, and saying, hands up. They show up 90 minutes later, and then they don't take him out. They just say, hey, lay your gun down, Breivik, and Anders Breivik. And he comes out and does that. He's going to serve 21 years maximum, and he's going to be this big Hitlerian hero when he gets out, I guess. And I compare it to that because Hitler did the same thing with his beer hall attack on the parliament, and then he got put in jail for a year and a half and wrote Mein Kampf. That was all staged. So this is definitely nasty. They want to have a new clash of civilizations, and this has got that written all over it. And the fact that he's fawning around with the kill all the Muslims, oh, I love Israel stuff. Or that could be a complex frame-up of that. I mean, again, you can't believe the Facebook, you can't believe the web stuff. We don't know any of this. And they wouldn't let him be seen in court. They wouldn't let him be seen in court. They wouldn't let him speak in front of the camera. So we don't know if he's even saying these things he said. To me, he looks highly intelligent, but he also, with that little smirk, looks like he's flown over the cuckoo's nest. Obsessive-compulsive, basically. Webster Tarpley, doctor of history, frequent guest here and contributor, tarpley.net. My friend, what do you think's really going on here? We just had Dr. Steve Pieczenik on, his illustrious career in Black Ops himself. The Jack Ryan character in the Tom Clancy Patriot Games novels, co-author with him. He's saying this is the pristine, real terrorism, the equivalent of the gilded unicorn, never known before. He admits most terror is state-sponsored. He says this is not synthetic. What says Webster Griffin Tarpley?
Well, I have to say, in regard to your previous guest, when Morrow was being held by the Red Brigades, I was part of the effort to try to find Morrow and to save his life, and I guess your previous guest was on the other side of that. So I have to disagree with him again. What we've got here with Breivik is a patsy on steroids. This is either a psychotic or a fanatic or a double agent or a mercenary or something like this. He is entirely a creature of NATO intelligence, and this entire event is inconceivable without sponsorship by NATO intelligence. First of all, concerning the ideological profile of the patsy, I mean, one of the main rules in an analysis, as you've shown over the years, is that we don't want to focus too much on the patsy that is being projected through the world media. We want to look for the technicians and the moles that they don't want you to see, because the whole thing is designed to get you to fix it.
Yeah, he's all flashy, and the Photoshop glamour shots, the videos, the treatises, it's all a big fat ball of bacon on the end of a hook trying to catch a crawdad.
Right. It's like a public relations firm has gone to work for him. He's got publicity photos. It's like a press kit that people have been given for this character. Now, just interesting, in this 1,500-page screed of his, and maybe you can also comment on this, as I understand it from the London Daily Telegraph, a lot of that is simply plagiarized, lifted word for word from the Unabomber manifesto. And that already is a contradiction, because...
No, they admit about 95% of it is plagiarized and unattributed, which is what intelligence agencies just recently constantly get caught recycling garbage.
I guess the CIA or NATO intelligence budget didn't allow them to go out and hire some new hack writers. But again, enough of him. Let's look for the moles and let's look for the technicians. Maybe we start with the technicians. According to this interesting Oslo newspaper, VG, and I've been getting some reports from some very fine people in Norway, VG reports eyewitnesses. There are at least 2 eyewitnesses that they name, and other eyewitnesses unnamed at this youth camp on the island, who state emphatically, categorically, there is a second shooter, and they even give you a description. He's 1 meter, 80 centimeters tall, dark dark hair, Nordic features, whatever that means. I guess it means something in their parlance.
Lantern jaw. Just keep going here. Yeah.
This looks like the person who actually carried out the shooting, because we've seen this again and again, right? With Major Hassan at Fort Hood, there were 1 to 2 more
drills,
shooters,
other shooters, Columbine, 7/7.
Sirhan, with Cho, Virginia Tech, there was a second shooter there. Now, the police response to this, as I understand it, is to say there may be somebody else. This is an ongoing investigation, but if you talk about a second shooter, then you're spreading fear. Now, that's obviously they want to suppress this. So I think this is important. Don't let them write this out of the media narrative, because it did get into CNN and CBS Radio News and France 24, and the world media have somehow registered that there was...
No, just like John Doe number 2 did, and then the FBI agent came out and told the LA Times, I've seen the tapes that we've confiscated under national security. It shows McVeigh with a whole bunch of people, including John Doe number 2. And we had eyewitnesses from inside the building that saw McVeigh a day before with the very same men inside doing telephone company work with gray sticks of butter. I mean, it's always the same. Of course this guy didn't act alone. And they know the public's going to wake up to that. So now he says there's other cells. They're about to strike any minute, Webster. Go ahead.
But before we get to this, one of the techniques is then, if the police realize that there are these persistent reports of a second shooter with plenty of eyewitnesses and even a description in this case, which is remarkable, they go out and arrest somebody and then say, oh, no, that was the guy, but it turns out that he's not involved. At 1 p.m. on Friday, a man with a knife was arrested and then released. There have been, as I understand it, raids in a number of countries. There's even a guy in Poland. According to my reports, there's a guy in Poland who is still being held under suspicion. He at least has been arrested in Poland as a possible accomplice. So this is the thing to look at, because we have to assume that this other figure is the second shooter, the technician. In other words, the person who really has the weaponry. He's described as somebody with an automatic rifle and a revolver or a handgun. And we have to assume that it's going to be very difficult to kill 75 or 80 people on an island if you're just one person. That poses just intrinsic problems, barriers that it's going to be very hard for anybody to go through. So this is, I think, the first thing. The second thing is the presence of moles. Now, the moles would be people inside the state apparatus, inside the police, the justice ministry, whatever it is, who protect the patsy.
And we know this came out a year ago that the CIA had penetrated their state police, national police, and the Oslo police, and were recruiting them to fight terror, including retired police. Right. That's the perfect network for this.
Right. This is, of course, as you say, the CMAS, Security Incident Management Analysis System, SIMAS. That's the network. That's the U.S. government. And the cells that they set up cells too. These are called Surveillance Detection Units, SDUs. So an Oslo television station in November of 2010 reports the U.S. government is avidly recruiting former policemen, retired policemen, including the former head of the Oslo anti-terror police, to take part in these surveillance detection units of the Security Incident
Webster, this couldn't be any clearer. I mean, Norway's not toeing the line for the New World Order police state, and so they get a right-wing attack in there, and now they get to use it all over the world. You've got the Financial Times of London saying that this attack personifies the rise of the new right. In fact, let me read the exact headline. And then, meanwhile, that's the name of the Rise of the New Right show on MSNBC, implying that I'm calling for violence by editing my words out of context. I mean, this is really a setup, Webster.
This is all completely absurd, because everybody should realize every word out of this guy's mouth, every word on his idiotic manifesto, this is coming from NATO headquarters, Brussels. Look at it that way. Or Langley, Virginia. Or Wilton.
And whereas NATO was staging Operation Gladio stuff against leftists and people in the 70s and 80s, now it's against the populists who aren't going to go along with the New World Order takeover. Webster, Tarpley, stay there. We're going to come back. We're going into overdrive today. It'll be PrisonPlanet.tv and InfoWars only when the main radio show ends in 10 minutes. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, I want to continue looking at this bombing and shooting, and people are like, hey, it's Norway, why do we care? Ladies and gentlemen, they are all over the news. Every major TV station, every major network in Europe, the United States, England, saying they are going to start putting conservatives on no-fly lists, with no judge, no jury. They're going to start tracking everybody. They're going to start demonizing. They're going to start tracking gun purchases outside of law. The ATF already started that. I saw all the pre-scripting to change the war on terror away from only hyperventilating about Muslims underneath the table trying to bite you to the white people, the conservatives, the libertarians. You know, they are the devil. If somebody's Hispanic and a libertarian, look out, or black and into freedom, look out. This is basically about the system going after everybody. The left are terrorists. The Muslims are terrorists. The right-wing are terrorists. Everybody's a terrorist but the ruling class. And you look at all of these things as Facebook being changed and Christian and conservative being added. I mean, I disagree with Dr. Pieczenik. I mean, I can see from his perspective that, you know, he thinks this is real. I mean, I don't see evidence of that. And I wish that was the truth, because that's not as scary as knowing the system did this. Now, Webster, we have their own media saying, look, for some reason, NATO and the U.S. are infiltrating us. We have a history of over 200 bombings in Gladio. For those that don't know, tell folks what Gladio is and NATO stay-behind networks. This group's trying to pull out of NATO operations. I mean, this is really pretty obvious here.
I think it's quite obvious. Let me just say, concerning the police, moles in the police, before we move on to your question, the moles in the police, I think, are indicated by the fact that it takes 90 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, an hour and a half for the police to get to the island. Why were there no helicopters available in Oslo to transport a SWAT team, the Delta Force or whatever they have, from downtown Oslo or wherever their base is to this island with the youth camp? Why did they have to go by car, essentially? Why no helicopters? And why, when they get there, did they load all their equipment into a boat and then have the boat begin to sink? You could say this is the Keystone Cops, this is a comedy of errors, but I don't think so. It reminds me again of the Paris police leaving Princess Diana in this car for the best part of an hour after that accident. It's a level of incompetence that simply cannot be believed. So it takes them an hour and a half to get to the island, and then when they get there, they know the guy's name and they call him by name. Now this indicates a profound subversion of the Norwegian police. I would point out this is a monarchy, and in monarchies it's easier in many cases to subvert the government institutions than it is in something that's not a monarchy. So I think that also plays into it. So I think we've got a patsy. He's being built up. He's a media star. We've got a technician, at least one technician in the background. That would be the second shooter. And we've got pretty obvious moles in the police. We even have a name for their network. That would be this SIMAS. Now, you say Gladio. The question for me is this security incident management analysis system the new Gladio? The old Gladio was that when General Lyman Lemnitzer, after having made that Operation Northwoods proposal to Kennedy and getting turned down, Lemnitzer then went on to become the commander of NATO in Brussels, and he began to set up what were called stay-behind operations. They already existed, but he put them on a new active footing. Now, these existed in all countries. The Italian case is best documented, but there are pretty good indications in other countries. So the Gladio is a series of arms caches with guerrilla fighters organized around them. The idea is that they'll wage guerrilla warfare against the Soviet Red Army if the Soviets rolled over.
But instead they go stage terror attacks and blame it on their political enemies in false flags. Webster, we got to go to break. Main radio show's over, going into expanded overdrive at prisonplanet.tv right now. Stay with us.